Right. One more aspect is that okay, civil services in India is more coming from elite academic background, people coming from elite institutions, which is also declining now. And at the same time, the political system is coming from more or less the mass base, right? So this is an important theme around which questions can be asked. Right, what you talk about Bhim army, fine, obviously that is a very perfect example of Dalit mobilization. Whereas civil services, you say still the elite base is still there. Right, so even if the UPSC report says that 52% around people are coming from the engineering background or the technocrats, okay, this does not technically mean that they are coming from the mass base. Obviously, they are the people who are coming from the middle class or upper middle class, and they do not actually represent this mass mentality, right? So you can say still the Indianization is still to go ahead, even though the civil services is becoming more representative. Okay, people from all the classes and groups and communities are entering into civil services. That is okay. Fine. So one nature of question can be here, and because of this, we see the conflict between the political system and civil services, or we may see a conflict between the the democracy right? So this is one very important theme around which many questions will be designed and they are asked. More or less the answer will be similar. Fine. So right. And now obviously one theme that emerges again in paper 2 is the constitution. Constitution and its values. Constitution and its values is another area which is quite dominant. Fine. It's generally comes from a very simple, you can say, difficulty level is not very high. Plus, the nature of questions are more analytical, but they are very simple. I would not say they are very complicated, right? Like generally the question will be around the value premises. This topic is also somewhere linked to your administrative law at times, right? So the basic concepts of administrative law that you study and this topic, they get integrated. Then recent reforms, administrative reforms, civil services reforms, that gets integrated here. Political culture, the questions on political culture and administrative culture, again, that is one area which is visible here, right? So when we are focusing on this topic, we must focus more on certain value premises which dominate. One is obviously more related to your preamble. Right, preambular values. This is one theme which is recurrently asked, not always but more or less quite often. Preambular values like justice is one theme which is frequently asked. Then your secularism, socialism, right? And these ideas mostly fit into the domain of like debate, right? So here also we have to focus on what or how is the nature of question which is asked, right? So now let's say question pertains to that what are the fundamental principles or values imbibed in the Indian Constitution and which become a guiding light or a guiding principle for civil services, right? So fundamental values, right? Fundamental values becoming guiding principles for bureaucracy, right? Now the questions majorly when we talk about preambular values will revolve around this idea, right? And if we go to the constitutional values, they will be more concerned with federalism, right? Fundamental rights, the dynamics of fundamental rights, intergovernmental relations. Intergovernmental relations will again then bring the issue of national, state, local relationships, right? And here variety of aspects can come under this theme, right? Financial relations, political relations, financial, political, administrative. Right? So now this will be more again a kind of static and contemporary mix of topics. Am I audible? Audible, huh? So it will be a combination or mix of these two, right? Fine. So logically now this will be one area which will be dealing, and majority of the questions you will find in paper 2 coming from these areas, right? So if we talk about this part, this is more part of that is theoretical, right? And a part of that is more dynamic in nature, right? So concept of justice now runs throughout the constitution, runs throughout the paper 2 also topics, right? When you talk about development administration, you are talking about civil services in democracy, or bureaucracy and democracy relationship, justice comes into that. Then you talk about rural development, role of Gram Sabha, okay, planning mechanism. So in most of these areas you will find the concept of justice, right? So the themes more or less will be this, right? Then this topic is also quite contemporary in nature, right? We talk about like Indian versus Western concept, right? Recently your controversies regarding, obviously, Babri Masjid controversy was there, which has finally been settled. Then Gyan Vapi and lot of other issues which have been emerging, right? They somewhere create background for the discussion on secularism, right? So when we say Indian versus Western brand of secularism, right, there are key differences which emerge, and many questions can be centered around this, right? If we'll talk about a corresponding idea related to this also, right? So when we say Indian versus Western, right, here you will find that there is lot of heterogeneity, right? Whereas Western can be further divided into European, right, and American. So here now again this is obviously talking about more liberal regime, right? And in European also we have France versus others, right? But this will be more of theoretical background, right? If question comes, then definitely it will talk about the role of secularism in promoting the constitutional value system, right? Or secularism as a fundamental idea of Indian constitutional philosophy, right? So you have to somewhere discuss the theoretical aspect here, right? Like France is facing a lot of difficulties because of its idealistic secular attitude, right? Whereas America is not, because it is liberal, but it is not idealistic secular in nature, fine? The rest of the Europe is also quite conservative when it comes to that, even though the concept of human rights is very strong here. Right? In spite of that, they somewhere value their cultural distinctiveness. Whereas when we come to this country, India, right, this heterogeneity is valued as diversity, right? It is valued as diversity, and this diversity somewhere creates the dilemma, the problem, right? The crisis. Crisis of equal and fair treatment, right? Considering we are a democracy, Right? So considering that we are a democracy, and in democracy, right, public opinion dominates. Now public opinion here is like the majority opinion. Numerous debates obviously have centered around this idea that, okay, fine, when we talk about heterogeneity of Indian society, we value that as diversity, but is diversity the driving factor behind the instability that comes in the political system? Is diversity the main reason for the crisis of governance in this country? Right? So like we said, we have, tried to integrate this diversity, okay, with the protection of distinctiveness, right? Now that is something unique for us, that we are trying to balance this diversity with distinctiveness. So we try to protect the community and its value system. We also try to integrate the community value system into the mainstream value system, develop a sense of nationalism, or you can say nationalism is fine, right? But can nationalism be in sync with secularism, right? Or is nationalism antithesis to the idea of secularism? So does it create a problem or does it promote the idea, right? That is also a debate which may come, which is generally asked, not directly but many times indirectly, right? Then secularism coexisting with, or nationalism and secularism coexisting with intolerance debate, right? And here you have to highlight or understand the importance and role of the social media, right, or increasing impact of ICT and globalization. Right. So nationalism coexisting with secularism. Secularism leads to intolerance debate. Intolerance debate is maybe one of the aspects or consequences of nationalism. We can use the word not nationalism, but somewhere we can call it as hyper nationalism. Right? Right? And ultimately the impact of the social media, ICT and globalization on this intolerance, or the kind of political, you can say, debate or political narrative that dominates the intolerance debate today. Right? Today in the sense last 10 years or 14 years, you'll find that, right? If you want, you can. Okay. Right, so this will be one important theme which will be reflected there, right? Then, like I said, socialism is one area, again, an issue which keeps coming one after another. Socialism, obviously, it is not the way it is asked in polity or governance paper, or maybe paper 2 GS or society, Indian society, right? It will be more focusing on, you can say, the dynamics of market-led governance, right? As a philosophy, how it is being impacted when you use the word corporate state, talking about the era of NPM or e-governance, right? And ultimately we are talking about the decline of the state. So the debate around socialism will be mostly asked in this framework, right? Also, the kind of socialism we follow, like the concept of democratic socialism, right? And whether the LPG reforms, are in sync with the idea of democratic socialism. In this context, how the PSUs have performed, right? What changes are going today when we talk about privatization, right? We'll talk about all that, we'll write about all this, but today we are discussing majorly the framework, right? So privatization and the role of PSUs, how they are able to coexist together, and what have been the structural reforms in the PSUs which were obviously a consequence of the LPG reforms, right? So your structural changes here, right? Then socialism as an idea or ideology coexisting with planning as a mechanism. Now when you say planning, obviously you can also talk about theoretically the concept. We'll talk about how theories can be linked to these topics. Theoretically you can talk about your idea of DA, development administration, especially Wiedner, right? And concept of planning, centralized planning, and how socialism as an idea coexisting with your perspective planning, right? Or with indicative planning. Right. So indicative planning, now again you can link a question regarding this idea, right? NPM, LPG, indicative planning, right? So planning as a mechanism, how it fits into this concept, the theme of socialism, right? What has been the achievement, or then the question may move towards more of planning as a topic starting from here. So it may be like, has the notion of democratic socialism worked well for India? Has the notion of democratic socialism worked well for India, right? In this context, discuss the reasons and impact of decline of planning commission. Right? So now this may be a theme which will be integrated with planning as a topic and socialism as a debate. Right? This can again focus on that, okay, demise of planning commission. Does it mean that we lost almost 40 or 50 years because of planning in India, right? So what were the negative aspects of planning in India? They can ask these kind of questions, right? But demise of planning commission, does it indicate, is it similar to demise of socialism? Right? It is not, right? Obviously it is not. This is not how it is or it works. Fine, so this can be again an idea that, okay, whether the demise of this planning commission indicates demise of socialism as an idea, right? That is not true, because we are now moving towards a neo-welfarism state or neo-welfare state. Right? Moving away from that basic like roti, kapda and makan. Now we are moving away from that and trying to focus on, more or less we believe we have secured it, but it's not totally correct. But yes, these are primarily used as means now. They are not the ends or the targets of the welfare schemes. Okay, they are only the means of the welfare. Fine, so this is like means of welfare. Right. Otherwise, we are focusing obviously more on, promoting savings, financial inclusion, providing employment opportunity, integration into mainstream, developing habits of skill building. Right. So we are talking about Make in India, Stand Up India, Startup India. Now these are various types of goals which we have now redefined. Earlier our goal was mainly associated or targeted at this only, right? So now this has changed. So questions can be linked and asked this way. Fine. Then your topic generally like union government, right? Or union government and state government. Two topics are there. Fine. Here the prime focus is obviously on federalism, okay, which we have listed there also. Right. In federalism, obviously 2-3 aspects, 2-3 themes are more important in this topic. Right. One is these stages of federalism or evolution of this concept. Right. How it is distinct from the American view. Right. Then, correct? Are you getting to here? So stages of evolution, obviously the federalism, how it goes or how it evolves till Nehruvian era, right? Or Nehruvian socialistic era. So how it is visible in Nehruvian era, right? Then from Nehruvian era a little transition which takes place 2 to 3 years, and then comes the Indira Gandhi phase. Right, from the Indira Gandhi phase again till emergency, then during the emergency, and then post emergency, and the coalition era phase emerges. So you have to understand and define this approach here, right? Then how or what has been the impact of the recommendations of second ARC or Punchi Commission, right? If you want, you can integrate Sarkaria Commission, right? Punchi Commission, and later on various other bodies have been created, right? So as an impact of the demise of Planning Commission, how the notion of federalism has evolved, and ultimately how it is working under the Niti Ayog. And what has been the change witnessed under the Niti Ayog, right? Or the enactment of GST, or the issue of GST Council. Right, plus Finance Commission, right? So 14th Finance Commission, 15th Finance Commission, comparative perspective or comparative perspective. So basically these questions mostly revolve around first part as this. Right. Second part is mostly the application of this idea. Like I said, GST, Finance Commission, Niti Ayog, right, and technically application of how the dynamics of fiscal federalism is evolving, especially after the recommendations of the Finance Commission, right, and the increasing role of local institutions, right, local level bodies, especially rural development. How this is changing when the center of development is, or you can say the locus of development is changing from the state to the local bodies like Gram Sabha and Gram Panchayat, right? So how this fiscal federalism is evolving, right? Will it be right to say that we are into the era of, recently there was a news regarding that, right? Competitive federalism. So we are in the era of competitive federalism, and how this competitive federalism is promoted by Finance Commission recommendations or by Niti Ayog. Obviously GST Council conflicts somewhere indicate that okay, there is the states are not getting enough representation and center can do away with majority of decisions on its own. So we have to discuss, we have to understand those aspects, right? How that is all changing these dynamics, correct? And competitive federalism emerging as an important idea, right? Then here the question again will move back to some static things. Static things will be the structure of union government or the structure of government, right? Majorly okay, this will be focusing on structure of government, mostly focusing on, like, you know, the union or central administrative institutions which are very powerful, like when we talk about PMO, right? The dynamics of PMO, the cabinet secretariat, right? Group of ministers, informal group of ministers, empowered group of ministers, right? Cabinet committees. And all that, right? Simple questions regarding secretariat, right? Especially the structure of secretariat, and very basic question like you have field, headquarter, relationship, right? It should not be theoretical, it should be studied more in applied part, right? Theoretically we know the contribution of Gulick or Gulick and Urwick, Willoughby and others, they have contributed it theoretically, but that is not the idea here. The idea here is to understand that is the decentralization model or decongestion model of the government, from secretariat to regional offices to the field offices to specialized units and specialized agency, is it actually working or not? Okay, that is the question that can be asked here. Fine. So this can be one basic question or approach to basic question which can be asked here, right? Then traditional questions like on kitchen cabinet, right? Role of kitchen cabinet today, probably the relevance of kitchen cabinet today when Prime Minister itself is becoming very powerful, right? So the emerging concept of or visible prime ministerial government, then some usual questions on parliament, legislature, right? Generally their focus is on declining why there is a decline in the legislative accountability of administration. Fine. Then weak opposition, right? Issue of parliamentary privileges, then various types of committees and their role. Okay, an interlinked question or theme with this, which generally is asked, is obviously the role of CAG, right? Or impact of auditing as an instrument of legislative control and accountability, right? They can also move little bit or become more creative, and they can ask basically about the relationship between both houses of the parliament, right? So that also can be one specific area. right? Comparative powers of both the houses, right? That itself can be one important area which can be asked simultaneously, right? Then composition, you need to have some data and facts here which are necessary to deal with such questions. So data and facts like composition, right? Working, right? How many days they have been in session, right? Gender composition of parliament. So all these things or this kind of data you must have obviously to write such questions, right? And then question can be upon, obviously here when we are talking about union government, right, it can be about minister civil servant relationship, minister civil servant relationship, right? And a lot of questions are designed around this idea. Okay, what should be the nature of minister civil servant relationship, right? Is secretariat or does secretariat or working of the secretariat reflect dichotomy or functioning dichotomy in Indian parliamentary system, right? Is dichotomy the basis of the secretariat system? So many kinds of questions they can design here related to this, or politicization of civil services. They can get into those aspects here also while they are asking questions simply on these topics, right? Politicization, or somewhere you can say the concept of administrative ethics. Political culture, code of ethics for legislators, ministers and civil servants. Fine. So this can also be one you can say interesting area which you can actually look forward when you are dealing with this topic, right? Then you have a comparison between the union and state government. Like state government, generally the questions will be, okay, let's add a page to this. So state government, district administration, district collector, they are the topics which are purely interlinked, right? And here obviously one perennial issue which they are after is governor, right? So president governor relations. Governor CM relation, ordinance making power. Now various types of analysis related to that. Power, right? And they can go for pardoning power. And technically, when I say pardoning, obviously President and Governor both has the power. So there can be a comparative question also. Right? President versus governor, right? Now that can be one very logical question which they can ask, right? And then normally questions related to veto powers and all that. Okay, that is also very important aspect which is asked, right? Governor, role of governor, right? Role of governor in policy making. Okay, there are a variety of dimensions which you can explore while you are reading. And is it visible? Issues of conflict between CM versus governor, right? Governor and federalism, right? Role of governor with respect to special areas. President and governor both, right? If you talk about 5th, 6th schedule. Right. So this may be one theme. More or less questions will revolve around this idea. Then obviously you are talking about CM or CMO, right? And Chief Secretary, right? They may also become more probably creative and create some very fundamentally illogical questions, even though it is quite okay to ask. But in terms of content, it lacks a lot of things, right? Chief Secretary and DGP relationship. We are basically focusing on institutions of the state government. So how this relationship is changing, right? How the or the proximity of the Chief Secretary to Chief Minister or DGP to Chief Minister, right? Is it indicating a politicization of administration? Chief Secretary and DGP cannot work without in close collaboration with each other, right? So is the hierarchy of a generalist administrator like IAS impacting the functioning of a semi-specialist, right? Or a generalist specialist position like DGP, right? It has been news in many states that this has been happening, right? Then Chief Secretary CM relationship, especially after you talk about the West Bengal issue, right? Alappan's case, right? This will be again an important area which can be asked, right? The proximity of Chief Secretary to Chief Minister, or the rationality of all India services, right? Technically like IAS, being appointed as the chief secretary. Okay, or they can also ask that, okay, should it not be that the people from state civil services should rise to the cadre of chief secretary or secretaries in the state government, because probably they can bring more efficiency to administration, right? So they can ask these kind of themes. Fine. So generally here they will be more confining to such questions, right? They can also have they can also ask about simple comparison regarding chief secretary with cabinet secretary, right? You know the concept of residual legatee. Right. Then the kind of structural reforms, structural and procedural reforms, right, that are being initiated in state government structure. So at the state government level. Right, so they can ask these kind of certain reforms which are being initiated. Okay, they are trying to increase lateral entry, they are trying to create specialist departments, right? Many of the ministries have been broken into smaller ministries. Many departments have been broken into smaller departments, like in the states of UP, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan. We see a lot of fundamental structural changes being emerging, right? Panchayati Raj institutions are being more empowered, and in that scenario what is happening is that they are somewhere, bypassing the regular administrative machinery and directly collaborating with the local governments, especially after the planning mechanism has shifted to the local level, right? So they can focus on these questions also, right? Apart from that, obviously another important area is the district administration, which should be clubbed with the state government and administration only, right? And on district administration aspect, okay, they will be more concerned about obviously the role of DM, right? And one aspect is that DM is the key, right? Is the central figure in district administration, right? Then they can also ask that, okay, DM's role should decline in the era of rural governance, right? DM is first among equals, right, but not the boss. Right? Or they can focus on obviously the structure of development administration. The structure of development administration at the district level, right? The structure of development administration, a very important topic here, right? Then you have a static part like changing pattern of district administration, right? How the emergence of Zila Panchayat, right, or CEO or CDOs, right, or you have lot of other rural development officers, okay, how they have impacted the status and role of district collector, right? How the impact of globalization, or in what way globalization has impacted in general the public administration and specifically the district administration, right? Then the diversity of functions which have emerged, fine. So issues like decentralized planning, then disaster management, right? Impact of GST or Finance Commission recommendations, or you can say e-governance and the changes witnessed, impact of internal security issues, terrorism and all this, right? Permanent issues like how politicization or changing dynamics of political scenario in India, okay, how it is impacting the peace and stability and internal law and order situation at the district level, at the local level. So that can also be one issue, fine, basically pertaining to law and order, right? Communalism and all those. Right, so as we have the emerging political narratives, they are impacting again the nature of relationship which is changing here, plus the complicated issues which are emerging. Nature of crime, right? Use of technology in crime, use of technology in law and order, use of technology in development and administration. A lot of other impacts it will have, and this can be the sense of the question which is asked here, right? Okay, let us keep it here itself, right? Then, okay, we also have talked about like second ARC has especially focused on having a district government, okay, changing the name of IAS to Human Development Services, HDS. Right, or for that matter we can say the specific focus on having you can say actually a local or a district level local government, right? Giving more powers to the local bodies or local representatives in planning and decision making, So technically how the collector's role will be reformulated. Obviously, we cannot deny the importance of the role of collector. We cannot neglect his legacy of 200, 300 years. And because of this legacy, a lot of benefits are created for local governments, right? Local governance and district administration must have a very amicable relationship, a collaboration to improve better implementation of planning and policies. They need to have good collaboration. So for that purpose, what needs to be done? That is the idea, right? That is the theme here. So generally the questions will be around this. Then you have a simple topic like planning and PSU. Right? Generally you can say again the questions are interlinked here, but they focus more on Nehruvian socialism. Nehruvian socialism and how the goals of DPSP were to be realized through planning commission, right? Impact on overall development administration or welfare state by the demise of planning commission, right? Niti Aayog and its impact, right? Success, probably success, and you can say the activism of Niti Aayog, that how the development as an agenda has become a proactive focus of the Niti Aayog rather than what it was for the planning commission. Planning commission's technical structure which was there, right, which was a mammoth system itself, it was a kind of bureaucratic organization. Emerging as a bureaucratic organization was itself very slow paced in terms of development, right? So how Niti Aayog has reformulated that entire perspective, how it has contributed to it, and is there a need for other mechanisms or platforms for this, right? Again, see, they will bring back the question related to decentralized planning, again local bodies. You see, all of them are technically interlinked, right? Decentralized planning, again your 73rd and 74th constitutional amendment, again that will come into picture. Fine. So again the questions can be diverted to the same logic, right? As far as your PSU, the usual questions will be asked. Are they still Leviathans, right? Classification now, some recent steps, right? Then what is the importance of the MOU system, need for PSUs under NPM era, right? Accountability and PSU, see, they can again keep asking such questions, interlinked, right? And how to restructure the SIG PSUs, what are the basic mechanisms which are available for restructuring of these SIG PSUs, National Investment Fund and all those, right? So, is there a need for PSUs today? So they can ask variety of questions here also. Right? Forms. Right? These are static questions which everybody can do. Forms and structure. forms and structure and utility of these. Fine. That is one area now, right? And other areas, like obviously we said, we talk about one very dynamic area which is there is your urban governance, right? Urban development. Basically here the focus is on understanding first the nature of urbanization, right? We start focusing on urban local government, 74th Amendment Act, which is illogical. First you have to focus on urbanization, right? Its nature, scope, issues, right? Then allied topics of urbanization like industrialization or industrial development, right? Growth of service sector, right? And issues like migration, infra is another important issue, right? And your social services. First, this is the basic aspect which you need to understand for this, and then more focused upon the environment, sustainability, population growth, right? How difficult it is to manage things like, if you talk about post-COVID management system, right? Then understanding certain policies or various schemes which are emerging, like you can understand about Amrut, Urban, smart cities, right? Redevelopment plans, then issues of slums. Okay, this will be basically for urban development, development administration, challenges to development administration in urban areas. And then major part would be basically the urban governance structure. Right, here very important aspect is basically the case studies. So urban governance structure, basically we are talking about the municipal administration or municipal system, right? So types of bodies or types of organization, right? Their positives and negatives. That is also a very important aspect to understand. Types. Why I'm saying case study? Because this is a very important aspect. Here we can discuss comparative developments, right? When we talk about countries in EU, right, or even in USA, right? Even in countries like Africa, in continents like Africa, many countries are there which have modified a lot of urban development services, which probably we have not been able to do. So we have to, through these case studies, we have to bring a lot of facts, we have to bring a lot of recommendations, right? And also whatever second ARC has talked about, it has also given a lot of case studies. So municipal system is one area which you can talk about, and how it is lacking Why that vibrancy is lacking? Why we see multiple structures? Right? A kind of pluralism. We see a pluralism, dominant pluralism in urban governance, and how that is something which is reducing the efficiency of urban governance. Their financial position, when we see regular conflicts happening in Delhi between the Safai Karamcharis and the urban government, or the Delhi government and some other unions. So we see on a daily basis the conflicts which are emerging. So why there are multiple structures, why there is too much of pluralism, and ultimately there is lack of coherence, there is lack of an organic interdependence between these institutions, right? So this is one important theme or issue, you can say, lacks organic